very strong longitudinal research shows that the single greatest factor for faith transmission across the generations is relational warmth, particularly from a father figure. And to me, that's the heart behind the field experience, is that you see faith transmission in your generation because of your relational warmth. And so you might have heard me say this in the past here on the podcast. I'm at a point right now where I'm filtering my fathering, who I am as a father, through two lenses. That is that I am safe enough for my children to bring me their sin, and that I am a joyful father, that my kids are joyful. But in order for my kids to be joyful, I have to be joyful.
I won't lose hope in the night when the fire's growing dim. I'll just let go and I'll try. Help me walk this road and find my way back home. Find my way back home. Find my way home.
Welcome back to the Famous at Home podcast. We are in the middle of season 2, Awakening Hearts. Today, we're talking about the heart of a man, the courageous, compassionate, and cheerful heart of a man. I put 3
I liked your
C's
alliteration.
in there.
Yeah, I like that.
Did you like that?
Yeah, it feels like a Baptist pastor from like
and
the
you're
90s.
doing like tender and fierce. So you've got 2. I've added 1 because compassionate and courageous, I feel like, are kind of like the tender and fierce component for a man. But I also added cheerful because, dadgummit, I want to be cheerful and happy and
you
joyful.
needed it.
Yeah, we needed that cheerful in there.
Yeah.
Cheerful heart.
So I'm going to ask you some questions today, Josh.
All right, let's do it.
I shall be your interviewer.
I like it.
And we're going to talk about we're not
Not
going to
tender and fierce. We did that last week.
Fierce.
This week's
It's still on my brain.
the field experience.
We're going to talk about the field experience.
But before we do, we are in the holiday season.
Yeah.
Tender and fierce. Actually, deadline 2 more days.
Yep,
if you're
December
listening to this
13th.
right now, for the early bird pricing, it is selling out, so we are super excited about that. Cohort 1 launches January 8th. Cohort 2 and 3 are also scheduled for 2025. You can look at the show notes for the details of the 2025 dates. Christi spent last week talking all about Tender and Fierce and the retreat, and so if you didn't pick up on that episode, we'd love for you to go back and do that. The field experience is also launching. We're talking about that today, but before we do, it's the holiday season, and some of you may right now.
Do your children need an emotional, healthy library? Yes, they do. Do we all? What am I feeling? This was our first book. This one is probably, not probably, it's for sure the best seller of all.
Oh, it is.
Of
No,
the
it is.
kids' books
And here's
ever.
why. Here's what I love about it is this pull out feelings poster in the back. And if you're listening to this on audio, we're showing it on YouTube right now, but it's got this really cool feelings poster. You can tear it out, hang it in your kid's bedroom or your own bedroom for that matter, above your headboard or something. Yeah, husbands, your
Please
wives
send me a
would love
picture
it.
if that's true. We also what do I do with worry? Trying to angle it so you can see it. What do I do with anger? This is like the emotional support library. Also, if you haven't done 25 Days of the Christmas Story,
Support library.
it is for every family.
You're right. Anger,
And what I
worry, these are good
love
books.
is, you know what I love? I love that people have these books, don't have not a clue who we are. Not that it matters anyway. And then they'll find out later. They're like, I've had that's my kid's favorite book. I had no idea that was
you guys.
Yeah. 25 Days of the Christmas Story. So
You gotta look up at that camera.
I'm looking at it because I can see that I'm showing it, and
I
I feel like not Vanna White, like QVC, where they show, but I'm not good at it. So,
and we've also got a little fancier now on the podcast. So we've got this monitor down below us where we see ourselves. And I think Christy's looking at the monitor, which if she's doing that, her eye gaze isn't right at the camera. So she's not looking at you.
When I'm holding up these books to make sure you can see them and they're in focus, because we have to see if they're in focus. Anyway, we're learning because now we have a better camera and it's a little bit too fancy for us probably. But 25 Days of the Christmas Story, this is the Advent family experience. And then also we have Easter, which I don't have right here, but you might as well get Easter now too.
10 Days of the Easter Story.
10 Days of the Easter Story. So those are family devotionals that go through those seasons. Obviously Advent is the month of December. But it's an experience. So it's all activities, but also it's dealing with like the real heart, because that's sort of our heartbeat, ching, is the emotion part of this. Isn't just like the story of Christmas, but like, how does this actually impact us? Like, and what did they experience? And so pretty pumped. It's so great. And I was going back through some of the footage. Remember when we filmed the stuff? Like the kids were little, or they look little.
Oh, I remember very much.
And like we did,
but
some
it wasn't
of the
even that long
activities.
ago. I mean, we're talking like 2020, 2021, but it's just your kids grow so fast.
They look like babies.
I know, it's crazy.
They look so little.
Wow.
But those are really great things if you are looking for gifts for your kids, for which we all are. Yep. Are we not? The number of texts that I receive of like, can you give me a gift idea for your kids? And at this point, I'm like, I don't know. I send them a water bottle because they lose them every week.
Everywhere we go.
Give them new water bottles that they're going to lose next week. I don't know. I have no other suggestions except great books. That would be great.
That'd be great. No, why do I say tender and fierce? Because it's
because we've talked about it so much.
Field experience.
Let's talk about field experience. Okay, I'm actually going to start at the very beginning. Why? Why did you decide to launch the field experience?
I'm at a point right now where if I don't launch it, I'd be disobedient.
I know.
And it's because I have had this burden from men. And a lot of it came out of our marriage coaching, I'll be honest, where marriages tend to be the trouble. It's like, when we've got a problem, we take Tylenol. When we have a headache, we take Tylenol. When we have a marriage problem, we reach out for marriage coaching or counseling or that type of thing. And we get a lot of couples reaching out. And a lot of times what Christi and I find is that individually, the husband and the wife are just, their heart isn't awakened. We're dull when we're not in those moments. And the same thing is true with the two of us. Mm-hmm. We've never really done a ton of marriage work, but we've done a ton of individual work, and it's only enhanced our marriage.
High five.
High five. And so
it's done the work. And I don't want to say that like that will answer all your problems, but I do think it's like 90%.
Oh, it's huge. And so this is where the heart of, and we can only coach so many people one-on-one. Mm-hmm. And my heart has been burdened, and this is why we have Famous and Home Ministries. It's why now we want to multiply this. We want to reach as many families as we possibly can. And doing that one-on-one just got to be really difficult. And I'd have so many men submitting, forms of, hey, can I get some coaching? Can we do some coaching? And I'm like, I need to multiply this. Mm-hmm. And so that's where the field experience came out of. We also had the Leaders Heart cohort for many years. And Leaders Heart cohort was amazing in and of itself. Again, I think the struggle is, and again, we did in-person events there. That was probably the most beautiful thing I've ever done, was the Leaders Heart cohort, in terms of the ability to enter into the heart of a man and to see transformed lives. And that's basically what the field experience is, except the field experience is going to be more ongoing for the opportunity of those who want to keep on going. And we will do in-person events down the road, but it's an opportunity for us to journey together. So I call it a coaching and discipleship journey that's going to be fun and joyful, and it's going to go deep too. And the reason I say coaching and discipleship is because I'm going to coach you in the areas of marriage and family, but at the same time, we're going to also really get into the heart of God and the heart of God for us and experiencing the love of God for us. And so I couldn't be more excited about it. In regard, I think one of the biggest struggles that I have had is figuring out the structure. What's it going to look like? How do I make sure that men are invested in it, that we build healthy community in it? And so I've taken a lot of time over the last year to really start building out. We'll now have a Famous at Home app that will be part of this whole journey. And there's built. I
feel like that
community.
Was like a very we maybe should have made that
a big deal.
Made a bigger deal. There's going to be a Famous at Home app.
Yeah, and you'll be able to go in the app, and you'll have your community in the app. It's branded app. It's everything. And so it's pretty exciting. I
feel like you're downplaying it just a little bit. But yeah,
so
it's very exciting.
The why is I just want to see men's hearts come alive.
Yeah.
I think that we need community. Mm-hmm. I've done this interest list for a long time. If you're someone who's been on that interest list, You may have submitted the form a while ago. It's just, I've been asking men, what do you need? Community is the number one thing that I keep seeing over and over and over again. And that's what we really want to build here is really true community amongst a group of men that can be ongoing, that isn't just like a retreat and then you're done and you're home and you don't have anything else going on, but we can build this over time where we have ongoing community together. And that's the heart behind it. So
I love the heart behind it. I get to talk to the women who are so excited for their husbands to have this, because I just think there's a vast void in the market of, I guess it really is men's discipleship, because there's not, like, there's retreats or there's conferences, but it's like this boost in the arm and it feels great. And then you go home and then what? And then they're on their own.
And like, that's where this was birthed out of. That's been my heart's desire. And I think the other thing too is permission. You know, men need permission to lead differently than what the culture's giving them right now. And I think that's the thing that I've had permission because I have other men who have given me permission because of the way that they're living their lives. We live in an amazing community here in Tennessee where we've got just incredible community of families doing this, but not a lot of men have that. And so I've been super fortunate to be around other families, other men living this stuff out in my day-to-day life. And I just want to give other men the permission. Yeah. And so I think it comes down to that. It comes down to this ongoing sense of community and permission that we can lead differently.
Yeah. What I want to go to the name for a second, because like the field experience. Tell me about that. Like, where did that come from? What does that mean?
Well, I think what's fascinating about it, and one of the things that we're going to do in the cohort is we're going to look at that definition of the word field. Because if you actually look it up online, just go look it up, just go field definition. And I've never found a word that has more definitions to it. And what's fascinating about it is that, let's just think from an agricultural standpoint. When we have a field, you cultivate that field. You have to nurture that field. And if you're a farmer throughout history, you're cultivating the same field year after year after year after year. And you're seeing the seasons in that field. And so we are given different fields. That could be land. It could be a business. It could be a church. You might be a pastor. It could be your family. We are given fields by God as gifts to rule over. It starts in Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 2 with where Adam is told to rule. He's to then name the animals and rule over them. Take dominion over the earth. We have different fields in our lives as men that we get to take dominion over, to rule over, and to cultivate. So the three words I use are to rule, cultivate, and multiply. Right? So we rule over the fields that God has given us. We cultivate them really, really well, whether that is real land, whether that's a business. It's the word says to do all is unto the Lord. That could also mean the heart of your wife or the heart of your kids. We got to cultivate that. There's a very clear mandate that Paul gives us in the New Testament that says that my job as a husband is to make my wife's heart radiant and have no blemish before the Lord, to be pure. Like, that is a very distinct honor and privilege, and it takes work to cultivate over time. I'm cultivating her heart year after year after year, and there are seasons, and there are droughts, and there are floods, and there are all kinds of things.
Let's check.
There's harvest, there's fruit, a lot of beautiful fruit.
Yeah.
And then, but also the hearts of my kids. And so, listen.
When the temptation is to jump ship and try to find another field.
It's not yours.
Yeah.
It's not yours to cultivate.
But it gets to be.
And rule over.
And I think that's like, even hearing you talk, like, it gets to be boring when you're cultivating the same field, the same land over time, until you realize this is your kingdom.
Yes.
Like, this is what has been
and multiplication
titled to you.
And multiplication doesn't look like what the world tells us it should look like often.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the multiplication of your heart is for it to be radiant before the Lord.
Yeah. And they're like, let's go back a few years. It wasn't.
That wasn't all my fault.
I'm
But
not I've never said that it was, but I love that you just took
I love it.
You just took some responsibility over it. But it didn't look great at the time. And you're right, it wasn't all your fault. Most of that wasn't your fault.
I was ruling and reigning as much as I possibly could and
Yeah.
cultivating as much as I possibly could.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I mean, there are seasons where that is true. One person is pushing more than another and plowing more than another. And it's like, we have to pay attention as men to how we are still in the midst of that. Like, let's just say, I'm doing all that I can and you're not on board. I still have a team. I'm fielding a team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you think about all the definitions of field. I'm fielding a team. I go out into the field. Like, think about the army definite. There's a campaign. Like, you're fielding. You have to go out into the field to battle, right? So there's so many definitions and so many ways that we think about the field that we just want you to experience your field, and we want to help you really cultivate those fields really, really well so that they multiply for the kingdom of God. And that's what the field experience is all about. That's where the definition comes from. And if it puts us literally into a field together in the future, then wow, let's make it happen.
I'm waving my hanky. Yes, it will. And you will.
Yes.
And you will gather in real person, which will be powerful too. So like, tell us like even the what, like actually that does bring up a great question. Like, what does that look like? How will this, since people don't live all in our area?
It's a great question. And
Tennessee.
And here's the other thing that's been difficult for me to navigate is, and I'll just be transparent about it here on the podcast, is how do we reach as many men as possible without it being taken advantage of, right? There's always, I'll never forget. Or too exclusive, right? That's what I don't want. I want it to really be healthy and helpful. I'll never forget when I was in my counseling internship many, many moons ago. My internship supervisor, I was seeing an 18-year-old kid, and his dad was paying for it. And I'll never forget my internship supervisor saying, I would see if that 18-year-old would pay half of the counseling, because it has to cost him something. Mm-hmm. There has to be an investment on his part in order for him, because if it's being bought for him, or if it's being, and I remember there was a woman at the Tender and Fierce retreat a few weeks ago, and she came up to me and she said, I just want to thank you so much because you scholarshiped me to be here. And I didn't remember it at the time. And I looked at her and I said, well, to be very honest with you, we pray through those scholarships. So I don't remember it, but that means that the Lord desired it for you, because we felt like we heard a yes. And I just want to thank you for the way that you stewarded that gift. And we just, I mean, we obviously have scholarships available. And so reach out about that. At the same time, we genuinely believe that there has to be an investment. This is an investment into I believe, is the greatest field of your life, the greatest part of your life, which is your heart towards God and your family that you get to lead.
Yeah.
And so that's where that comes from. We have designed it, and I've prayed and wrestled with this extensively. We're going to start it out this way. We're going to start it out as a 3-month cohort. And that 3-month cohort is going to specifically be a cohort of men. So you want to get in. You want to get in now. It is open for registration. The first cohort begins January 8th will be our first meeting together. And each month we'll have a 90-minute call together, coaching call. And we'll also have a 60-minute time of Bible study and prayer together as men. And then there will be also videos throughout the month. There'll be push notifications through the app. There's a whole bunch of different things that are going on throughout the month. And you can take a look at that in the show notes below. But the key for me is going, how do we make sure that we're journeying together, that we're building community together? And that's really what this is all about. And so that's what it looks like. It'll start there, is that 12 12-week or 3-month cohort where we build relationships within your cohort. And then it will, if you're interested and the 3 months was really, really good to you and you built healthy relationships in there and you're really growing out of it, we will keep it on a monthly basis at a lower cost so that you can maintain ongoing within that whole process monthly. And you would then go into the other cohorts and you would all join together for a monthly journey together. But we will separate you individually into your individual cohorts. My prayer is that you build deep friendships. There'll be individual circles that you'll have, individual groups, almost like small groups in a way, that you'll have.
Some people
together.
just totally cringed at that. Yeah. I even want to say that, like, where it's like, there's a reason you don't have community too, because a lot of us have been burned by it. And so my prayer over the men, especially because I do think men are lonelier even than women. And I know the women are lonely, but I think men don't know who to trust. And so my prayer, our prayer for those, especially those first 3 months, is that you form deep community that is trustworthy. These are guys that like literally have your back. Like, you're going to war, these are the guys at your back. That's what it should feel like. Yeah. And that's our prayer that it feels like. This isn't like kumbaya, okay?
I think as men too, one of the other factors of that is, and I hear this often from men, is I've never been given a blueprint myself for how to lead family. My dad didn't give that to me. I don't know how to do this. And
like how to disciple your kids, how to lead your wife spiritually.
I think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of men who are joining this that are in that same boat, that are feeling that. And we really want you to coalesce together so that you get to experience, you're not feeling alone in it anymore. And that's the heart behind it. Yeah. So.
But to just, I think, you know, like you throw out, I use the term small group, like we call them circles, but like, it has a feel that can feel threatening and scary. And my prayer is that it does the exact opposite. It's actually the fire beneath you, that, because you know the enemy's pushing you away from everything that's transformative and actually going to give you power, authority, peace, direction, clarity in your life. And so my encouragement, if this is a wife listening, if this is you as a husband listening, that if you feel pushback in any way, you push forward anyway. Because the pushback or the like, I just want to hide in the corner, like, how's that been working for you? I would guess that it hasn't been working great, because it doesn't work great for any of us. That's not accusatory. Yeah. That's just, we have to be in community. And yet we've all been burned by the idea of community, or, we've just experienced hurt in that way. And my prayer is that this is the redemption.
And the other thing that I would say too is I've worked really hard to try to make sure, because one of the things that I hear from men a lot is, you know, and I see this across the board. A lot of times we hold men's events on the weekend. Well, men's events on the weekend aren't well attended because it's pulling us away from the one area that we actually can be present in on the weekend. And so I've done everything that I can to also make this so that it's not feeling like you have to take a lot out of your life in order to do this. There will be some sacrifices, because obviously you have to show up for a 90-minute coaching call, 60-minute time of prayer and Bible study together. And this is my first launch. So I do want to say that too. I'm sure we will be making tweaks along the way, and listening to those of you who sign up initially, we'll be making tweaks along the way, because I want to make sure that it fits as many people's schedule as possible. But at the same time, also challenges you to be present, to be engaged, and to say yes to the things that do matter.
So good. If you were to like speak to a man today who was like curious about this, but wasn't sure he was ready, what would you say?
Why don't you think you're ready? I would simply ask, why don't you think you're ready? What is holding you back from being ready? Yeah. Because that's not I can't make that decision. Is it a financial decision? Is it I don't have enough time decision? You know, a lot of times what ends up happening is if you're listening to this podcast episode, or you're kind of on the fence about it, like, yeah, I kind of want to do it, but I'm not 100% certain. Well, what's keeping you on the fence? Like, if you're disengaged with it, there are barriers that are preventing you from doing it. And I would just highly encourage you to go, what are those barriers? Like, ask yourself, what are those barriers? And are those barriers excuses, or are they actually legit
Yeah.
reasons? There's a lot, as Christy said earlier, a lot of times we just say doing the same thing. Well, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And, if your marriage is at a, 5 or lower out of 10, on an intimacy scale, like the intimacy of my connection to my wife is at a 5 or a lower out of a scale of 10, I'd go, okay, so, you're kind of feeling that, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, I'm not really doing anything different. Well, I would encourage you to go, what do I got to do different? Like, you're going to either end up in therapy if you're not already. You're going to at a marriage retreat, which we highly recommend any of those things. I highly do. I would just say that at some point you're going to have to say yes to something.
Yeah.
And if this is that thing, then I would encourage you to give it a shot. But what I would not say is don't make excuses about, because and I'm speaking this as someone who's been on the other side. I'm not trying to beg you to be in this. I don't want to beg you to be in it. If I'm begging you to be in it, you're probably not the guy that needs to be in it. I've hit the bottom rung. I've hit the burnout. I know what it looks like to live in fear. I know what it looks like to not be truly connected to my wife. I know what it looks like to feel like I'm passing something along to my kids that isn't healthy. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I did something about it. I went to therapy. I went to counseling intensives. I entered into those things because I saw them as an investment.
That's good.
I want to pass a heritage to my children more than I want to pass an inheritance to my children. And so I think it's really important that you go, what matters to me? What really makes the difference? What matters to me as a man? And what legacy am I trying to leave?
Yeah.
What legacy am I trying to leave for my wife, for my kids, for my kids' kids? And this is part of the field experiences. Listen, I'm not talking anymore about what I'm pouring into my kids. I'm now thinking for my own generation or for my own life, what am I pouring into 4 generations down the road? My great, 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 great grandchildren. How am I raising my kids today that heritage, that blessing to the 1,000th generation that Moses speaks of in Book of Exodus, how do I make sure that is passed on in the Straub family lineage? And I think that's a question you have to ask yourself as a man, is to go, where is my heart and what is my why? And for many of us, we're still stuck with, well, I got a business to build, and the season I'm in, I've got, I'm pastoring a church, and we're getting through a transition time. Those are all good things, and they might be viable things for the season that you're in. But if those things keep being and keep delaying the very thing that is keeping you awake at night, then I would really challenge you to go, am I making an excuse? And am I really chasing the real why of my life? Because that's what's going to keep your heart not awakened. And the opposite of not awakened, I guess, is deadened, hardened. And my prayer would be that you don't have a hardened heart. I think when we truly are building for the kingdom of God, people want to see a glimpse. Paul writes about this in Corinthians, in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, where he says, we don't need a letter of commendation. Like, no, what we need, you are a living letter. You are the living letter. And when he says that actually refers, this is what's fascinating about this in his letter to the Corinthian church. What that refers to is the presence of God. It refers to the Ark of the Covenant. In other words, the presence of God in the Old Testament went wherever the Ark of the Covenant went. Well, in the New Testament, when Jesus lives in our hearts, he goes with us everywhere we go. And what Paul is saying is, you are the living letter. Everywhere you go, you're building for the kingdom of God. And that means you're a glimpse. That means you're a light. That means you are a city on a hill which cannot be hidden. Don't lose your saltiness. And I think we lose our saltiness when we make excuses about our why and we're not living passionately for the Lord. And man, my heart for the field experience is that we are men whose hearts are awakened and that we're living as light and salt on the earth, and that we are those living letters to the world around us.
So good. Can you speak to the wives for a minute? The wives that are listening, because I know so many wives have this heart cry. I talked to some just very recently, and they're like, I want my husband to do this so badly. how would you tell them? What would you say to them to say this in a way that doesn't feel condemning, that doesn't feel like, I think you need this. I think, you know, that comes off with the air that there's something that in you that needs to be fixed. What would you say to a wife who wants this so badly for her husband and wants to present it in a way that's like with the open heart?
Yeah, I would say honor begets honor. I would start there. Honor begets honor. And so, the word says to outdo others with honor.
Yeah.
And you have never motivated me to do anything when you nagged me. You've never motivated me to do anything when I felt belittled or when I felt like I was smaller than, or that I wasn't living up to the expectation that you had for me. And so I would start there. We cannot, as a man, as a husband who's experienced that from his wife, I would just say that's never motivated me. What motivates me is when you encourage me. What motivates me is when you honor me. What motivates me, and it always starts there. And I would also venture to say this too, and I hope I try to do this well, and I hope I do it well, is that we use an us against the world attitude, and even in our language. So in other words, I'm not using you where it feels like I'm putting you in the blame. I'm using us, our language, where we are, hey, I really like where we're heading right now as a family. However, I feel like I've gotten stuck here, and I've owned my thing. And let me give you an example of this. I'll do a real life example in our own lives where, I really love the adventures that we're making as a family and the adventures we made this past year as a family. However, for the new year, for 2025, one thing that I haven't done a really great job of for our family is planning ahead, where we know exactly what we're doing as a family on this date, and we can all look forward to where we're going on a vacation or doing this. Even though we've done it well, we're a little bit more last minute, spontaneous. And for this next year, I'd love to sit down with you. Could we sit down together as a team and as a family, and could we come together with a plan to make our family come more alive by planning for 2025? I mean, I'm using that example because that's a real life example for us. But
we had to have a planning meeting to schedule our planning meeting.
But you hear the way that I'm bringing that about with I'm owning my own failure. I'm bringing her into it. And so you can do that in how it's not manipulative. It's just going, no, I know my stuff. And for us to be stronger, for us to be better, how can we come together, and how can I support you in that? And so I think always lead with words of affirmation and honor. Yeah. Like, support your husband on where he's doing well. And just go, hey, listen. And especially if you've been impacted by Tender and Fierce, to go, I've been so impacted by Christi, and I've been so impacted by, that it's challenging me in this area of my life, And Josh, her husband, is starting this. And I think it's something to at least check out. And so I think that's it's non-threatening in that way. You're already doing great here, but I know I've been leveled up here. I'd love to support you in doing this and just checking it out.
I love that. So I think I would add too, just as a wife, like, I think stating your desires for your husband, like, I want for you to not feel alone. Like, I want for you to have community. And I know it's really hard to find it where we are. I want for you to have people that speak into you, that see who you are, see your giftings, like, want more, like, truly iron sharpening iron. Like, I know what's in you, and I know that you need excellence around you in order to sharpen to the level that, like, you're called to. And I just want that for you. And I think to just put in your desire for him, like, it's just like we do for our kids. Like, I think it's so much easier when we talk about our kids. Like, we want this for them, but we want this for one another too. Like, in marriage, like, I want you to have incredible friendships and people to lean on, and men to call you higher. And I thank you for answering that question, because I just was thinking of it as, a wife listening, where it's like, oh, I want this, but, like, I'm the one who's on board and he's not there yet, or he just doesn't know about it. And, like, how do you present it in a way that it feels like a gift and not a correction or something, or like something you need to do, add to your list, add to your life. But with that said, if this is something you feel like would be a beautiful gift for a man in your life, maybe it's a brother, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's you, maybe it's your husband, maybe it's your dad, I would just encourage you, like, give this as a gift for Christmas. Like, we were calling it a tender and fierce Christmas, but we're also now calling it a field experience Christmas, because I just don't think there's any better gift. Like, on the other side, watching over this last year, what has happened within women, we talked about it last week, but it is worthy of your time. It is like, he is worthy of your time and your like concentrated investment. I think it's like fasting, where it's like you take an actual stand and you do something to subdue the flesh. You do something to break through. Like, that's what these kinds of things are. It's like a true, like, it's a stake in the ground. Like, things change. Things change, and it's not just temporary. So I'm really excited for you. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, sweetheart.
This is a long time coming. Whoa. I feel all the emotion with that. It's been a long time coming. Mm-hmm. Men have been asking for this for years.
Yeah.
And I just haven't seen anything that fits the whole. Like, there's a void, I think, in men's ministry. It's not men's, like, I don't even want to call it men's ministry, because I think it's deeper. It's like truly men walking arm in arm with other men, like in solidarity.
Well, and I think too, the emotionally healthy component of that, because that's really where the hub of the wheel is for us, is we want you to be emotionally intelligent, emotionally healthy. This started, Famous at Home started because of wanting to raise kids who live, love, and lead well. And that all linked back to this phrase of emotional safety. And I'll close with this. Even, the research shows, very strong longitudinal research shows that the single greatest factor for faith transmission across the generations is relational warmth, particularly from a father figure. And to me, that's the heart behind the field experience, is that you see faith transmission in your generation because of your relational warmth. And so you might have heard me say this in the past here on the podcast. I'm at a point right now where I'm filtering my fathering, who I am as a father, through two lenses. That is that I am safe enough for my children to bring me their sin, and that I am a joyful father, that my kids are joyful. But in order for my kids to be joyful, I have to be joyful. And so I believe this is why we talked about courageous, compassionate, and cheerful men, is because I want to be able to be compassionate enough that my kids can bring me their sin. I want to be courageous enough to war in the supernatural and war for them against the things that are fighting for my wife and for my kids. And I want to be cheerful enough that everyone around me is experiencing the joy of the Lord and the joy of their salvation. And I think that's really where the compassionate, courageous, and cheerful heart is birthed out of. And that, I think, as we look at our fields and we cultivate them well, we need other people to come alongside us to help us cultivate our individual fields well. And when we cultivate, we can multiply the kingdom of God in a beautiful way. And I don't think there's any greater purpose on this earth than to be able to do that. So
I want to do like a golf clap, but like with a whole lot more energy. Just like, it's going to sound like a golf clap because it's just me, but amen. I'm proud of you.
So sign up. Link is in the show notes to register. We are keeping them, the cohorts. You can see that, so that we're keeping them. Seats are limited so that we can build community in each of the cohorts. Mm-hmm. And so take a look at that. It will, again, the opportunity to roll over into a monthly journey together as men is also going to be on the backside of that. But it starts with the cohort. We got to start with there. We got to lay the foundation, and I can't wait to journey with you. So check that out. If you have any questions, in the link in the show notes, you can email us through the website. So
until next week, we pray your heart is awakened and your family sees revival.
May you find your way home.
All the fear that